Now, it's been 410 days since the Hamas terror rampage and mass abduction on the 7th of October. 101 hostages remain in captivity. It's not clear how many of the hostages are alive. Hamas has yet to provide proof of life. The plight of the American hostages taking center stage in the U.S. with several recent meetings, including at the White House. So now we welcome Ruby Chen, father of hostage Itay Chen, an IDF soldier and a U.S. citizen. Ruby, thank you so much. Always appreciate you speaking to us. Day 410 and still no deal to bring the hostages home. We saw in recent days President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump shaking hands in that historic moment at the White House. The two men had also discussed the hostages during their meeting. What is your sense right now of the pressure the U.S. is exerting at the moment to get all the hostages home?
Yes, I would maybe rephrase the question a bit. I would maybe rephrase it and say, what are the parties, Israel and Hamas, doing in order to get to an end of war, ceasefire, release the hostages? The U.S. is a facilitator. Yes, they do have equity. Equity meaning both U.S. citizens, but also emotional equity invested in us, the U.S. citizens. But the key has always been, what is Israel willing to provide, and what is Hamas willing to accept? As they do have our loved ones, my son Itay, for over 410 days, we have not heard anything from him. And I can only go to my prime minister here in Israel and demand from him to bring him back.
And just a short while ago, talking about your Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, earlier in the day, he was in the Netzarim corridor offering a reward of $5 million for each freed hostage and free passage to each terrorist who helps, also free passage to the families of that terrorist. What is your response to that offer? What kind of message would you want to give to the Prime Minister about this strategy, so to speak?
I would challenge you and maybe use a different adjective and not say strategy. It sounds more like a tactic. I would hope to believe that after 410 days, the Prime Minister that visited Netzarim today would not say what he's not willing, which he said again and again, that Hamas will not stay in power. I expect him to say what he is willing to do and what he is willing to offer to bring back 101 Israeli citizens that under his watch were taken hostage. And he needs to repair that from an obligation that he has to us, not just a legal obligation, but a Jewish obligation, to be able to say after 410 days, he had a plan. The army did what it should. It has been able to destroy Hamas. This is what the former Secretary of Defense Gallant has said, as well as we've heard that from the United States as well. And now's the time to find a way to get the hostages out. I could share with you a little bit about what we learned from the United States.
Please do.
We, from the intelligence they shared with us, Hamas has been able to replenish its troops on the ground. They have the ability to continue this guerrilla warfare for a long time. And the message that the U.S. got from Minister Derma that just visited last week, both President Putin in Russia, President-elect Trump in Miami, as well as the White House officials, was that the same type of sentence we got from the Prime Minister about a year ago. Hamas is that close of breaking, and we just need a little bit more time. That is the same sentence I've been hearing for over a year. And the U.S. do not believe that Hamas is close to getting to a breaking point. And the question is, what is the Prime Minister and his government willing to do? Is my child Itay supposed to be sacrificed? Or is there a better solution than what we have seen him propose to date?
I certainly hear the point that you are making, that the discussions are what Hamas will agree to, what Israel will agree to, but there is no doubt with 7 of the hostages being American. We know what President Joe Biden has voiced over the last year and a bit. We also know what President-elect Donald Trump has said. It won't matter to the families which president manages to put that pressure on the stakeholders to reach some kind of a deal. But your take, given all these meetings you've had with the president, with senators in different cities, in different parts of the United States, your sense of the impact that the U.S. could have now and come January.
Yes, I could share that in the meeting that we had with President Biden a few hours before he indeed met President-elect Trump. They could have talked about dozens of topics. It was important for President Biden to share with us that he shared with President-elect Trump the urgency of the hostages, and that he calls for the incoming administration to work immediately with the existing administration. I know for a fact that the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, reached out to his counterpart, Mr. Waltz, and offered him to come in and work together on bipartisan issues, such as the hostage issue, as well as President Biden suggested or recommended to President-elect to meet the families and create that same type of emotional connection that hopefully will bring us to where we want to get to. President Trump at the Republican National Convention in July stated very clearly that if he's elected president and if by January 20th the hostages are still in captivity, hell is going to break loose. And he will do things that maybe this current administration was not willing to do. So if I was Hamas, I would heed those words of caution, and I would very much suggest them to find a way to get a deal, because if by January 20th this is not done, it's going to be very unpleasant to them and all of their people.
Ruby Chen, father of Itay Chen, we so appreciate you speaking to us. The heart of the nation is with the families of all the hostages. Thank you very much, as always, for being with us on I-24 News.
Thank you, and have a good night.